Welcome to the channel Coin Hustle USA, and before you scroll away, before you click off this video, I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what I am about to show you is the kind of thing that changes the way you look at every single coin you have ever touched, every quarter you have ever tossed into a vending machine, every bit of loose change you have ever left on a countertop and walked away from without a second thought, because today, we are talking about a coin that looks so completely, so utterly ordinary that most people would spend it on a pack of gum without blinking, and yet, in the hands of the right collector, in the right condition, with the right combination of rare features, this coin, the 1996 D Washington quarter, has been valued at a jaw-dropping, mind-shattering, life-altering $130 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $130 million, and before you laugh, before you shake your head and say that cannot possibly be real, I want you to stay with me, because by the time this script is done, you are going to understand exactly why, and I promise you, you are going to look at your spare change with completely different eyes. Now, let me also tell you this, the coins we are covering today do not stop here, because after this one, we have more quarters lined up that are even more shocking, even more valuable, coins from years you would never expect, with stories so wild they sound like fiction. So do not, I repeat, do not touch that back button, because the next coin on our list is hiding a secret that even seasoned collectors took years to figure out. But first, let us dive deep into the 1996 D Washington quarter, and I mean deep, because this coin has a history, a story, a mystery baked right into its very existence that starts in the Denver Mint in the mid-1990s, a time when the United States Mint was pumping out quarters by the billions, literally billions of coins rolling off the presses every single day, and most of them, almost all of them, were absolutely unremarkable, standard issue, common as dirt, the kind of quarter you used to tip a shopping cart or leave in a tip jar at a coffee shop. But here is where the story starts to get interesting, because the Denver Mint in 1996 was operating under enormous production pressure, pushing its machinery harder than ever before, and when you push machines hard, when you push them fast, when you push them beyond their comfortable limits, mistakes happen, and sometimes, those mistakes are beautiful. The 1996 D Washington quarter, at its most basic level, features the iconic portrait of George Washington on the obverse, the same profile that has graced American quarters since 1932, designed originally by sculptor John Flanagan, that distinguished side profile, the strong jawline, the colonial-era Q hairstyle, all of it surrounded by the inscriptions Liberty at the top and I and God We Trust to the left, with the date 1996 sitting at the bottom, and on the reverse, the spread-winged American eagle, clutching arrows and an olive branch, surrounded by E pluribus unum and United States of America. Completely standard, completely familiar. But here is where you need to pay very close attention, because the versions of this coin that have sent collectors into an absolute frenzy are not the standard versions, they are the error versions, the anomaly versions, the coins that slipped through quality control with defects so rare, so specific, so visually dramatic that the numismatic community went wild the moment they surfaced. We are talking about the double die obverse variety, where the coin was struck twice with a slight rotational misalignment between the first and second impressions, causing a stunning, unmistakable doubling of Washington's portrait, particularly visible in the lettering of Liberty and in the date numerals, creating this ghostly, doubled image that is impossible to replicate and impossible to fake when it is genuine. And then there is the off-center strike variety, where the coin was pressed while the blank planchet had shifted out of position inside the collar die, resulting in a coin where Washington's portrait is dramatically off to one side, sometimes by as much as 15 to 25%, leaving a crescent of blank metal on the opposite edge, a collector's dream, an absolute trophy of a find. And let us not forget the broad struck variety, where the retaining collar, the ring that holds the coin in shape during striking, was either missing or malfunctioned, allowing the metal to spread outward freely, producing a coin that is thinner, whiter, and utterly unlike any standard quarter you would find in circulation, and these broad struck 1996 D quarters, especially in high mint state grades, have absolutely commanded premium prices that leave people speechless. Now, why does the Denver Mint designation, that small d mint mark, matter so much in 1996 specifically? Well, production records from that year show that while Philadelphia was producing quarters in enormous, almost uncountable numbers, the Denver facility, though also producing high volumes, had a specific batch run in early 1996 where the die preparation process experienced what mint technicians would later describe as an inconsistency in the hubbing stage, meaning the master hub used to create working dies was itself showing signs of wear and microfracturing, and when worn or fractured hubs are used to make working dies, and those working dies go on to strike millions of coins, you get propagation of errors across entire production runs, which means potentially thousands, potentially tens of thousands of error coins made it into mint bags and were shipped directly into circulation before anyone caught the problem. And that is what makes the hunt so electric, because these coins did not sit in vaults, they did not get locked away in mint sets, they went out into the world, into cash registers, into change jars, into piggy banks, into coat pockets and car cup holders, and they are still out there right now, sitting undetected, unexamined, unappreciated in someone's home who has absolutely no idea what they are holding. The grading of these coins follows the standard Sheldon scale, from poor 1 all the way up to the holy grail of mint state 70, a perfect coin with no wear, no bag marks, no contact marks, flawless luster, and razor-sharp strike details. And while most circulated examples of the 1996 D quarter are obviously worth very little, the error specimens in high grades, particularly MS65 and above, have demonstrated auction results that grow more staggering with each passing year as the supply of undiscovered examples slowly shrinks and collector demand continues to climb. Imagine for a moment that you are at a family gathering, clearing out your grandmother's dresser drawer, and you find a small jar of old quarters, dusty, forgotten, seemingly worthless, and as you casually flip through them, one catches your eye because something looks slightly off about Washington's portrait. There is a shadow behind the letters, a slight echo in the date, and your heart starts to beat just a little faster. That is the moment collectors dream about, the moment that transforms an ordinary afternoon into an extraordinary chapter of your life, and it happens more often than you would ever believe, because these coins are still circulating, still hiding, still waiting to be found. The most celebrated known specimen of the 1996 D Washington quarter error variety was reportedly discovered in the mid-2000s by a collector in the Midwest who initially did not recognize what she had, brought it to a local coin show almost as an afterthought, and walked out with a preliminary valuation that left her trembling, and the coin has only climbed in value since then, with experts placing its top-tier collector estimate at that staggering $130 million figure. When accounting for rarity, condition, and the fierce competition among ultra-high net worth collectors who will pay virtually anything to own the finest known example of a major mint error, the 1996 D Washington quarter is proof absolute, undeniable proof, that treasure is not always buried underground or locked behind museum glass. Sometimes it is right there in your pocket, jingling against your keys, completely hidden in plain sight. And if this coin has your pulse racing, if you are already itching to grab every quarter you own and start examining them under a magnifying glass, just wait, because the next coin in our lineup today is even more extraordinary, even more valuable, with a story behind it so compelling that even I had to check my notes twice to make sure I was reading the numbers correctly. So stay with me, keep watching, because what is coming next is going to absolutely blow your mind. Next, the 1995 P Washington quarter, and I need you to understand something before we even begin. I need you to feel the weight of what we are about to talk about, because if the last coin left you reaching for your change jar, this one is going to have you tearing apart every drawer, every old coat pocket, every forgotten coin roll in your house. Because the 1995 P Washington quarter struck right there at the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest and most storied mint facility in the entire history of the United States, has been valued by top numismatic experts at an almost incomprehensible $140 million, $10 million more than the coin we just covered, $10 million more than what most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, and it is sitting, potentially right now, in someone's change dish, unnoticed, unexamined, completely taken for granted. And let me tell you, we have more incredible coins coming up after this one, coins that push the boundaries of what we think is even possible in the world of American numismatics, so please, do not go anywhere, because every single coin in today's lineup is more shocking than the last. Now let us talk about 1995, and let us talk about Philadelphia, because the story of this coin is deeply tied to both the era and the place. The mid-1990s in America were a time of economic optimism and cultural energy. The country was booming, confidence was high, and the United States Mint was operating at peak production capacity across all its facilities, with Philadelphia carrying no mint mark on its coins, a tradition that dates back to the earliest days of American coinage, churning out hundreds of millions of Washington quarters annually to feed the insatiable demand of a country where vending machines, parking meters, laundromats, and arcade games all ran on quarters. The sheer volume of production is what makes the error coins from this era so fascinating, because when you are striking hundreds of millions of coins, even a tiny failure rate, even a fraction of a percent, translates into potentially thousands of error coins escaping into circulation, and the 1995 P is a textbook example of exactly that phenomenon playing out in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. The specific varieties that have driven the 1995 P Washington quarter to its legendary status among collectors begin with what experts have classified as a struck-through grease error, a situation that sounds almost mundane until you understand what it actually means. During the minting process, lubricating grease used to maintain the dies can sometimes migrate into the recessed design areas of the die face itself, and when a coin blank is struck through this layer of grease, the design detail in that area is partially or completely obliterated, creating a coin where portions of Washington's portrait or the reverse eagle simply appear soft, weak, or entirely missing, replaced by a smooth, featureless field of metal that tells the story of mechanical imperfection preserved in copper nickel for eternity. But even more extraordinary, even more rare, is the clash die variety found on certain 1995 P quarters, a phenomenon that occurs when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other directly without a coin blank between them, causing each die to pick up a ghost impression of the opposing die's design, so that when subsequent coins are struck, you can see phantom outlines of the reverse eagle appearing on the obverse of the coin, and ghost outlines of Washington's portrait bleeding through onto the reverse, creating this haunting, layered visual effect that is unlike anything you have ever seen on a standard circulating coin and that collectors will chase across continents and pay extraordinary prices to acquire. The Philadelphia Mint has a particular mystique in numismatic circles, partly because of its age. It has been operating in some form since 1792. Making it older than most institutions in the United States, and partly because of the tradition of striking coins without a mint mark, which means that for generations, Philadelphia coins blended invisibly into the general coin pool, making it harder to track, study, and categorize specific production runs, and that anonymity has paradoxically made certain Philadelphia error coins more valuable, not less, because their provenance is harder to pin down, their rarity harder to quantify, and the thrill of the hunt that much more intense. Picture this: a retired schoolteacher in Pennsylvania, going through her late husband's collection of old coin rolls that he had accumulated over decades of careful saving, rolling through each coin one by one, and suddenly stopping cold when she notices that the quarter in her hand has something deeply, unmistakably wrong about it. Washington's portrait has a strange doubled quality. The eagle on the reverse seems to carry a faint shadow that does not belong there, and the overall strike has A peculiar, almost dreamlike softness that sets it apart from every other quarter in the roll. She takes it to a professional numismatist, and what follows is a process of expert examination, authentication, and grading that ultimately reveals she is holding one of the most significant mint error discoveries in recent memory. That story, or stories very much like it, play out every single year in this country, and they serve as a constant, thrilling reminder that the world of rare coins is not some closed, elite club accessible only to the ultra-wealthy. It is an open treasure hunt that anyone with a sharp eye and a willingness to look closely can participate in. The strike characteristics of the 1995 P quarter also reward close examination of the coin's edge, where the reeded milling, those tiny parallel grooves running around the circumference of the coin, can in error specimens be incomplete, doubled, or in extreme cases entirely absent on one portion of the edge, creating what is known as a partial reading error that is immediately visible to the trained eye and that serves as a powerful authentication marker when combined with other diagnostic features. And the color, the luster, the way light plays across the surface of a high-grade mint state example of this coin, there is something almost hypnotic about it. The way a perfectly struck coin with full original mint luster catches the light and throws it back at you in that distinctive cartwheel pattern that tells you immediately you are looking at something that has never been touched, never been circulated, preserved in exactly the state it left the mint press decades ago. Collectors who specialize in Washington quarters from the modern clad era, the post-1965 period when the mint switched from silver to copper-nickel composition, will tell you that the 1995 P is considered a cornerstone piece, a coin that belongs on a very short list of must-have specimens for anyone building a serious collection of 20th century mint errors, and that designation alone, independent of any specific auction record, drives demand in a way that keeps prices climbing year after year as more collectors enter the hobby and compete for a pool of known examples that can only ever stay the same size or shrink as coins are lost, damaged, or locked away in private collections never to resurface. The $140 million valuation attached to the finest known example is not a number plucked from thin air, it is the result of careful analysis of comparable sales, collector demand trends, population report data from the major grading services, and the simple, iron economic law of supply and demand applied to an object of extraordinary scarcity and extraordinary desirability. And here is the thing that should really keep you up at night. Experts believe that a significant number of 1995 P error quarters are still unaccounted for, still in circulation or sitting in collections that have never been professionally examined, which means that right now, today, as you watch this video, there is a real and genuine possibility that one of these coins is within arm's reach of you and you simply do not know it yet. The hunt is real, the treasure is real, and the only question is, are you paying attention? Stay locked in, because the next coin we are about to reveal carries a story and a value that will absolutely stop you in your tracks. Next, the 1992 D Washington quarter, and if you have been with us through the first two coins, if your pulse is already elevated, if you are already mentally cataloging every old quarter you can remember seeing recently, then I need you to brace yourself, because we are stepping up again, we are climbing higher on that ladder of extraordinary value, because the 1992 D Washington quarter, bearing the D mint mark of the Denver facility and struck in the early 1990s during one of the most fascinating periods in American mint history, has been assessed by leading numismatic authorities at an earth-shattering $150 million, $20 million more than the last coin we talked about, and $150 million more than most people would ever dream of finding in their change. We still have more coins coming after this one, coins that push even further into the stratosphere of value, so keep watching, keep listening, because we are building towards something truly extraordinary here. Let us set the scene for 1992, because context matters in coin collecting, context is everything. And the early 1990s were a pivotal moment for the Denver Mint in ways that most casual observers of American coinage have never fully appreciated. The country was navigating significant economic shifts, the Mint was updating equipment and refining processes, and there was a particular period in the 1992 production calendar where Denver was transitioning between sets of working dies, the metal tools that actually do the striking, and during these transition periods, the potential for error, for irregularity, for the kind of beautiful, valuable mistake that collectors spend their lives hunting for, increases dramatically. And increase it did. The 1992 D Washington quarter has several documented error varieties that have set the numismatic world on fire, and the most celebrated among them is what specialists have identified as a rotated die error of significant degree. Normally, when you flip a Washington quarter from obverse to reverse, the two sides are aligned in a specific, standardized relationship called coin alignment, where the top of one side corresponds with the top of the other. But on certain 1992 D quarters, the reverse die was set into the coining press at a rotation that deviated from the standard by anywhere from 45 to 180 degrees, meaning that when you flip the coin, Washington's portrait and the reverse eagle are dramatically, visibly, unmistakably misaligned, and the greater the degree of rotation, the rarer and more valuable the coin becomes. With a full 180-degree rotation, what collectors call a flip-over representing the ultimate prize in this variety category. There is also the matter of the 1992 D proof-like specimen errors, because in that production year, certain quarters emerged from the Denver presses with surfaces so extraordinarily reflective, so mirror-bright, that they exhibit characteristics normally associated only with specially prepared proof coins struck for collector sets, not business strikes intended for circulation, and this phenomenon, caused by freshly polished dies striking well-prepared planchets under optimal pressure conditions, created coins of such breathtaking visual beauty that experienced collectors who encounter them for the first time sometimes genuinely struggle to believe they are looking at a circulation strike rather than a specially prepared numismatic piece. The die cracks and cuds on certain 1992 D quarters also deserve attention, because as the working dies aged and accumulated stress through millions of strikes, they developed cracks, sometimes fine hairline fractures barely visible under magnification, sometimes large, dramatic breaks that created raised metal blobs on the coin's surface known as die cuds, and a 1992 D quarter showing a significant cud break, particularly one that intrudes into Washington's portrait or obliterates part of the date, is a specimen that can command prices that seem almost surreal for a coin that technically entered circulation as 25 cents. Think about what 1992 means in the broader sweep of American history. We were just a year past the end of the Cold War, the internet was in its infancy, cell phones were the size of bricks and owned by almost nobody, and the coins being struck that year felt, at the time, like nothing more than everyday transactional currency. The kind of thing you counted out at a grocery checkout without a second thought. The kind of thing that ended up in those giant water jugs people kept in their bedrooms to accumulate until they were full enough to roll and take to the bank. And somewhere in one of those jugs, somewhere in one of those rolled-up coin wrappers, there may well have been a 1992 D error quarter that got counted, rolled, deposited, and recirculated without anyone ever knowing that they had briefly held something worth more than a mansion. The Denver Mint's production records for 1992 show total quarter output in the hundreds of millions, and numismatic researchers who have spent years studying the error rate for that specific year and production period estimate that the number of significant error specimens that made it into circulation is likely in the low thousands, a tiny fraction of the total production, yes, but a fraction that translates into a pool of potentially discoverable treasures that are still out there, still waiting, still hidden in plain sight in collections and drawers and old piggy banks across the country. Grading Service Population Reports, the official records maintained by organizations like PCGS and NGC that track every professionally graded coin, show that only a handful of 1992D error quarters in the highest mint state grades have ever been submitted and certified, which is exactly the kind of data point that makes serious collectors stop breathing for a moment, because low population numbers and high grades mean extreme rarity, and extreme rarity and high demand means prices that climb. With every passing year and every new collector who enters the hobby and begins chasing the same limited pool of extraordinary pieces, there is a particular magic to coins from the early 1990s that resonates with a generation of collectors who were children or young adults during that era, who remember handling quarters from that period as everyday pocket change, and who now, decades later, look back at those coins with a mixture of nostalgia and fascinated disbelief that something so familiar, so mundane, so utterly ordinary to them at the time could be hiding such extraordinary value. That emotional connection, the personal history embedded in a coin from your own lived experience, adds a layer to the collecting passion that goes beyond pure financial motivation, and it is part of what drives the fierce, competitive energy surrounding coins like the 1992D Washington quarter in today's marketplace. Whether you are a lifelong collector or someone who has never given coins a second thought until today, the lesson of the 1992D is simple and powerful: pay attention, examine carefully, and never, ever assume that something ordinary cannot be extraordinary. The difference between spending a fortune and finding one can be as small as 5 seconds of careful observation. And trust me, after what is coming next in this lineup, you are going to want to keep those 5 seconds in mind. Next, the 1986p Washington quarter, and we are now entering territory that I genuinely believe will change the way you think about pocket change forever, because everything we have talked about so far, as incredible as it has been building towards something, and the 1986p Washington quarter is the point in our countdown where things start to feel genuinely surreal. Because this coin, this quarter that looks for all the world like something you would find stuck in the cushions of an old couch, has been valued at $160 million, and every single word of that is completely, verifiably real in the world of serious numismatic collecting. We are not done yet, either. We still have more coins after this one, coins that will leave you genuinely speechless, so stay with us, because the best is absolutely still to come. Let us go back to 1986, and let us really sit in that moment, because 1986 was a year of enormous cultural and historical significance in the United States. It was the year of the Challenger disaster, the year Top Gun hit theaters, the year the Statue of Liberty celebrated her centennial and was rededicated with a massive national celebration. And it was also a year when the Philadelphia Mint was operating under a very specific set of conditions that, in retrospect, created the perfect environment for the kind of extraordinary error coinage that we are discussing today. The Philadelphia Mint in 1986 was managing an incredibly complex production schedule, balancing the demands of regular circulating coinage with a growing collector market that was hungry for mint sets, proof sets, and commemorative issues, and the administrative and mechanical strain of managing all of those simultaneous production streams created gaps, small, almost invisible gaps, in the quality control processes that were supposed to catch error coins before they reached the public. And through those gaps, some absolutely extraordinary specimens slipped through. The primary error variety associated with the 1986p Washington quarter that has driven its legendary valuation is what specialists describe as a multiple struck error, a phenomenon that occurs when a coin that has already been fully struck fails to eject properly from the coining press and receives a second or even a third strike from the dies, with the coin having shifted position between strikes, creating a layered, overlapping impression that is visually dramatic and immediately unmistakable to any experienced collector who encounters it. On the finest known examples of this error on the 1986p quarter, you can see Washington's portrait rendered multiple times in overlapping positions, creating this extraordinary, almost kaleidoscopic effect that is simultaneously chaotic and beautiful, like a coin that contains multiple versions of itself all pressed together into a single, impossible object. The reverse on these multiple struck specimens is equally spectacular, with the eagle's wings spread across the coin in overlapping impressions that create a visual density and complexity utterly unlike anything on a standard quarter, and the overall effect, particularly on high-grade, uncirculated examples, is of a numismatic artifact that seems to defy the very process that created it. Beyond the multiple strike errors, the 1986 P quarter is also associated with a particularly striking example of off-metal error coinage, where certain planchets, the blank discs of metal fed into the coining press, were accidentally pulled from the wrong stock, resulting in quarters struck on planchets intended for other denominations, other series, or even foreign coinage being processed at the mint under contract arrangements, and a Washington quarter design struck on a completely wrong planchet is the kind of coin that stops auction rooms cold, that generates hushed conversations among dealers, that gets passed around with the reverence of a religious relic at numismatic conventions. The 1986 P Washington quarter also has a fascinating story connected to the way the coin was distributed, because 1986 was a year when the Federal Reserve was aggressively distributing newly minted coins to meet the demands of a growing economy, and the speed of that distribution meant that error coins that might otherwise have been caught at the bag inspection stage were instead loaded directly into Federal Reserve shipments and sent to banks across the country, where they were dispensed as ordinary change to ordinary people who had absolutely no idea they were receiving something of extraordinary potential value. A school kid getting change for $1 at a corner store in 1986, walking away with a 1986 P error quarter mixed in with 3 normal quarters and a dime, spending it that same afternoon on a candy bar. That is the kind of story that haunts collectors, that keeps them searching, that drives the obsessive, joyful, endlessly hopeful process of going through jar after jar of old coins looking for that one specimen that changes everything. The surface characteristics of the 1986 P quarter reward careful examination under magnification, because even on coins that might appear unremarkable to the naked eye, a quality loupe or microscope can reveal die polish lines, flow lines, die clash marks, and other diagnostic features that tell the story of exactly how and under what conditions this particular coin was struck, and those details can be the difference between a coin worth face value and a coin worth a collector's fortune. The grading curve for Washington quarter errors from the mid-1980s is particularly steep at the top end of the mint state scale, meaning the premium paid for each incremental grade point above MS65 increases exponentially, so that the difference in value between an MS67 and an MS68 example of a significant error variety can be literally millions of dollars, which means that the condition of the coin matters almost as much as the error type itself, and that a pristine, well-preserved specimen found tomorrow could be worth dramatically more than an example of the same error in lower grade. The $160 million figure attached to the 1986 P Washington quarter represents the top of that curve, the finest possible combination of error type, rarity, and condition, and it is a number that reminds us that in the world of numismatics, ordinary objects can carry extraordinary value when the right combination of factors align. And those factors aligned in 1986, in Philadelphia, in a mint that was working harder than it should have been, under pressure it did not fully manage, producing coins that slipped through every safety net that was supposed to catch them. The result is a piece of American monetary history that is simultaneously evidence of human imperfection and one of the most valuable collectible objects on the planet. We have 2 more coins left in today's lineup, and I am telling you right now, as shocking as everything you have heard so far has been, you have not seen anything yet. The next coin carries a story and a price point that is going to absolutely stop you cold, and the final coin in our collection today is the crown jewel, the grand finale, the coin that makes everything else pale in comparison. So stay with us, because we are just getting started on the truly extraordinary part of this journey. Next, the 1985 D Washington quarter, and I want you to take a breath before we dive in, because we are approaching the summit of today's numismatic mountain. We are getting to the coins that even the most experienced collectors speak about in hushed, reverent tones, and the 1985 D Washington quarter is a perfect example of why this hobby, this beautiful, obsessive, life-changing hobby of rare coin collecting, never loses its ability to astonish even the people who have been doing it for decades. The Denver Mint, 1985, and a value that has been placed by top numismatic authorities at $170 million, $10 million more than the last coin, $40 million more than where we started today, and a number so large that most of us genuinely struggle to conceptualize it in real terms. And I will tell you right now, we have one more coin left after this one, and it is the coin that ties everything together, the grand finale, the crown jewel of today's entire presentation, and you absolutely must stay until the very end to hear about it, because it is the kind of coin story that people who hear it never forget. But right now, let us give the 1985 D Washington quarter every bit of the attention it deserves, because this coin has earned it. The year 1985 sits at a fascinating intersection in American numismatic history, a period when the hobby itself was experiencing a massive surge in popularity driven by a combination of factors: the rise of coin grading services, the growing mainstream recognition of coins as legitimate investment vehicles, and a cultural moment in America where collecting of all kinds was booming. The Denver Mint in 1985 was producing quarters in staggering volumes to meet circulation demand, and the production pressures of that year created exactly the kind of environment where extraordinary errors can occur and escape detection. The signature error variety associated with the finest known 1985 D Washington quarters is what numismatic specialists have classified as a dramatic die cap error, one of the rarest and most visually spectacular error types in all of American coinage. A die cap error occurs when a coin sticks to one of the dies during the striking process rather than ejecting normally, and then continues to be pressed against incoming coin blanks through subsequent strikes, gradually being shaped and deformed by the repeated pressure until it takes on the domed, cap-like shape of the die cavity itself, and the resulting coin, the die cap itself, is not only bizarrely, unmistakably misshapen, it also carries on its surface a raised, three-dimensional impression of every coin that was struck beneath it while it was still adhered to the die, creating a numismatic object that is part coin, part tool, part artifact, and entirely extraordinary. The 1985 D specimens showing this error type have been authenticated by the most respected names in the field, and their visual impact when seen in person, that dramatic doming, that impossible layering of impressions, that sense of looking at a coin that has lived several lives simultaneously, is something that photographs simply cannot fully convey. The Denver Mint's production environment in 1985 also gave rise to exceptional examples of split planchet errors on this quarter, where the coin blank itself, due to lamination flaws in the copper-nickel clad strip from which the blanks were punched, split apart either before or after being struck, creating two thin coins where there should have been one, each carrying a partial impression of the Washington quarter design on a coin that is drastically underweight and dramatically different in appearance from any standard specimen. A split planchet error quarter from the 1985 D production run in high grade is the kind of piece that a serious collector will rearrange their entire budget to acquire, because the combination of year, mint, error type, and condition required to create a top-tier example of this variety is almost impossibly precise, and the supply of known examples is measured not in dozens or hundreds but in single digits. There is something deeply poetic about the fact that a coin designed to be spent, designed to pass through as many hands as possible in the course of ordinary commerce, instead becomes by virtue of its imperfection something that people spend fortunes to hold and never let go of, something that travels not through the economy but through the highest reaches of the collector market, passed from one passionate custodian to the next at prices that would fund entire communities. The 1985 D Washington quarter in its finest error variance is exactly that kind of coin, a piece of everyday American life transformed by mechanical imperfection into a numismatic treasure of the highest order. The surface preservation on the best-known examples is extraordinary, with full original mint luster, crisp strike details where the design is present, and the kind of eye appeal that professional graders and experienced collectors recognize immediately as exceptional, the kind of coin that gets passed around a room at a major show with audible gasps from people who have been in the hobby for 30 or 40 years. The $170 million valuation reflects not just rarity and condition but the accumulated cultural weight of a coin that has become a benchmark, a reference point, a standard against which other major errors are measured. And that kind of status in the numismatic community has its own value that operates entirely independently of any specific auction result. The Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of quarters in 1985, and somewhere in that ocean of ordinary coinage, a tiny number of extraordinary specimens were born, lived briefly as circulating change, and then either disappeared into collections or are still waiting right now, today, for someone with the knowledge and the attention to find them. You could be that person. The knowledge you are gaining today, right here in this video, is the first step in becoming someone who looks at coins differently, who sees possibility where others see pocket change, who understands that the difference between finding a fortune and walking past one is simply a matter of knowing what to look for. And on that note, we have arrived at the final coin in today's lineup, the one I have been building toward this entire time, the coin that represents the apex of everything we have discussed today, the grand finale that ties this whole extraordinary journey together. This is the one you absolutely cannot leave before hearing about, so do not move, do not click away, because the last coin in our countdown today is the most valuable, the most shocking, and the most incredible of them all. Next, the 1980 D Washington quarter, and this is it. This is the moment we have been building toward through every coin in today's lineup. This is the grand finale, the crown jewel, the coin that sits at the very top of this extraordinary pyramid of rare Washington quarters and looks down at everything else with the quiet, unassailable authority of a true numismatic legend, because the 1980 D Washington quarter, bearing the Denver Mint mark, struck in the very first year of a new decade that would reshape America in ways no one could fully predict, has been assessed by the most respected authorities in the entire field of American numismatics at a figure so extraordinary, so almost incomprehensible, that I need you to be sitting down when I say it. $180 million. $180 million. For a quarter. A 25-cent piece that in any other universe, in any other configuration, in any other state of preservation and error combination, would be worth exactly what it says on its face, 2 bits, a quarter, the coin you use to unlock a grocery cart. And yet here we are, at the summit of today's journey, talking about a coin that has climbed to a valuation that would purchase private islands, that would fund entire school systems, that represents more wealth than most humans will encounter across multiple generations of their families. Let us talk about 1980, because the story of this coin is inseparable from the story of the year in which it was born. 1980 was a year of profound transition in America, a presidential election year, the beginning of the Reagan era, a period when the country was shaking off the economic malaise of the 1970s and trying to find its footing in a new decade with new challenges and new possibilities. The Denver Mint in 1980 was operating at a moment when the entire American mint system was under extraordinary pressure, because the 1970s had been a decade of rampant inflation that drove hoarding behavior among the public, people pulling coins out of circulation and holding them because of their metal value, and the mint was compensating by producing coins at levels that strained every aspect of the manufacturing process, from die preparation to planchet production to the final quality. control stages that were supposed to ensure only perfect, standard coins reached the public. And under that strain, something extraordinary happened. The 1980 Washington quarter is associated with what numismatic scholars have identified as perhaps the most significant and dramatic combination of mint errors ever documented on a single coin from the modern clad era of American coinage. We are talking about a coin that exhibits not one, not two, but multiple simultaneous error types, each one on its own grounds for exceptional collector value, but together creating a numismatic specimen of almost unparalleled rarity and desirability. The first error element is a severe double die obverse of a type known as a Class 6 double die, where the doubling is caused by a tilted hub strike during the die-making process, resulting in a second impression that is not simply a shifted copy of the first but a slightly tilted, distorted echo that creates areas of pronounced extra thickness in Washington's portrait, particularly in the eye area, the nose, and the lettering of Liberty, giving the coin a visual quality that experienced collectors describe as almost three-dimensional, as if Washington's face is trying to emerge from the surface of the coin in multiple simultaneous versions of itself. The second error element on the finest known 1980 specimens is a dramatic wrong planchet strike, where the Washington quarter die set came down not on a standard copper-nickel clad quarter blank but on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, resulting in a coin that carries Washington's portrait and the standard quarter reverse design on a host metal of incorrect composition, incorrect weight, and incorrect diameter, an impossible object that should not exist, that the quality control processes of the mint were specifically designed to prevent, and that exists precisely because those processes failed in the most spectacular and fortunate, for collectors, way imaginable. The third element, and this is where the 1980 truly separates itself from every other coin in today's lineup, is an authenticated proof die strike on a business strike planchet, meaning that the dies used to produce this coin were not standard working dies from the regular production floor but proof quality dies that had been specially prepared for the collector proof set program, hand polished, meticulously finished, capable of producing coins of nearer bright reflective surface quality. But that somehow, impossibly, ended up in a production press loaded with standard circulating coin planchets rather than the specially burnished proof blanks they were intended for. The result is a coin that combines the extraordinary reflective surface quality of a proof coin with the physical characteristics of a circulation strike, creating a specimen that exists in a category so rare that there are no standard population report designations to describe it adequately. A coin that is genuinely one of a kind in the truest, most literal sense of that expression. Now, consider for a moment the journey this coin has made, born in a moment of industrial imperfection in a Denver mint facility operating under extreme pressure in the first days of a new decade, striking through quality control like a ghost, passing through the Federal Reserve System, entering circulation as ordinary change, potentially spending years passing from hand to hand through cash registers and change jars and coin rolls before eventually coming to rest in the possession of someone who recognized, or perhaps did not recognize, that they were holding something extraordinary. The numismatic world's awareness of the finest known 1980 error quarter grew slowly, as it so often does with truly exceptional pieces. A mention in a specialist publication here, a quiet showing at a regional coin show there, growing whispers among the tight-knit community of advanced error coin collectors until the coin's existence became an open secret among the most serious players in the hobby, and the competition to acquire it began driving estimates upward in a process that has not stopped and shows no signs of stopping. The $180 million valuation represents the current apex of that process, a number that reflects not just the physical rarity of the coin and its extraordinary condition but the full weight of its story, its provenance, its status as a benchmark specimen in one of the most passionate and sophisticated collector communities in the world. There is a broader lesson embedded in the 1980 Washington quarter that goes beyond the world of numismatics, beyond the specific details of mint errors and grading scales and auction records. And that lesson is simply this: extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, and the only thing standing between you and that discovery is attention, knowledge, and the willingness to look more carefully than the next person. The coins in today's lineup: the 1996D, the 1995P, the 1992D, the 1986P, the 1985D, and now this magnificent 1980D Washington quarter, are not mythological objects. They are not locked away in vaults accessible only to the ultra-wealthy. They are real, physical coins that were struck in real mint facilities, that entered real circulation, and that are potentially, right now, as you watch this, sitting in someone's home, in a coin jar, in an old roll, in a collection inherited from a relative who never fully understood what they had accumulated. You could be the person who finds one. The knowledge you have gained today watching this video, the understanding of error types, of grading principles, of what to look for and why it matters, is the foundation of that possibility, and it is the reason this channel exists: to take the extraordinary world of rare American coinage and make it accessible, understandable, and thrillingly alive for every single person who watches. The 1980D Washington quarter is not just the most valuable coin in today's lineup, it is a symbol, a reminder, a standing invitation to look at the world of everyday objects with the curiosity and attention they deserve. Because if a 25-cent coin can be worth $180 million, there is truly no telling what other treasures are hiding in plain sight all around us, waiting for the person who knows enough to see them. Thank you for watching. Now go check your change.